Marngrook. Marngrook is without question the oldest football game in the world. It was a precursor to Australian football, which is the oldest codified football game in the world. Marngrook was played throughout Aboriginal Australia, and more than 300 language groups originally had their own name for the game. These, for instance, included names such as Mingorn, Marngrook, Yamkurt, and Piltaja. However, the Wurrung word for football in the Melbourne area is Marngrook, and now it's the universally accepted name for this traditional football game. The rules of Marngrook were the same throughout Australia, and only the composition of the ball might vary. The ball most commonly used was possum skin stuffed with powdered charcoal, fur or dried reeds, and stitched up with the kangaroo tail sinews. The ball, also referred to as Marngrook, was usually about the size of a grapefruit. Marngrook was a socially inclusive game which both men and women played together. There was also limited children's versions of the games to foster the essential skills of Marngrook, but only those who had researched their adult intuition stage at the early teenage were allowed to play the adult game of Marngrook. The children's version of the game were amazingly similar to the modern schoolyard games of kick to kick and markers up, and had the same function. Bindi was the kick to kick game where two groups of children would kick the ball to each end and compete for a mark. Pando was the markers up version where the children gathered in a large circle and one child at the centre kicked the ball straight up in the air. The children would then rush in to compete for the mark. The child who caught the ball or otherwise grabbed it first would wait for the circle to reform and then kick the ball in the air again. From early colonial settlement in Australia, multiple records were kept that detailed the Indigenous cultural practice of Marngrook. One of the richest accounts of the early settlement exposure to Marngrook culture comes from James Dawson's personal record in the 1840s. One of the favourite Aboriginal games in football in which 50 or as many as 100 players engage at a time. The players are divided into two sides and ranged in opposing lines, which are always of a different class: white cockatoo against black cockatoo, quail against snake, etc. Each side endeavours to keep possession of the ball, which is tossed a short distance and then kicked in any direction. The side which kicks is the oftenest and furthest gains the game. The person who sends it highest is considered the best player. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned a bit about Marngrook.